Get national flood insurance. Talk to your insurance agent. Or call now for free information.
Hurricane George comes ashore in eastern Puerto Rico. These are scenes from San Juan less than an hour ago. Winds are gusting up to 115 miles an hour, over 200,000 without power, and reportedly 20,000 people are holed up in shelters to ride out the storm. Good evening, welcome to Weather Center. I'm Mike Bono. We'll have details on conditions across the U.S. in just a minute, but first we go to Jim Cantori in the Forecast Center for the latest on George.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. For those of you just tuning in tonight, folks, today we have seen George work its way across St. Croix and also St. Martin and also St. Kitts. Those areas hit pretty hard with the hurricane, and no doubt during the day we have seen the hurricane strengthen, and it is now a Category 3 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale, and just going to, no doubt, pummel Puerto Rico as it continues to pull on across. 35 miles southeast of San Juan. That was as of 6 a.m. We should get a new advisory here very, very shortly, or excuse me, 6 p.m. 18.1 north, 65.7 west. Pressure at 967 millibars, and that's the lowest that we've seen it all day. Hurricane warnings are posted for Puerto Rico, as well as the Dominican Republic, and also the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Now, you have watches currently for the north coast of Haiti, the southeastern Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos, and also eastern Cuba, and those areas could go into warning status, obviously within a 12-hour period. Here's the current radar. You're looking at Puerto Rico right here. This is St. Croix, which got hammered today, and the track basically took it on a west-northwest area, and it's what we've seen during the day today is this western wall really intensify, and that's what's basically hammering San Juan at the present time. And to give us an idea of what that's like, let's go talk to Nancy Rutherford. She is the Red Cross spokesperson that we have for you in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And Nancy, you've gusted to well over hurricane force there. Have you had a chance to be by any windows to kind of look outside, even though that's obviously not recommended?
Yes, actually, I'm very cautiously looking out a window right now, and what we're seeing is an increasingly deteriorating situation. The trees are bending to the ground when the gusts happen, and we can honestly barely see 100 feet to the road. We were looking out over the bay and saw the water just twisting and capping, and that was about half an hour ago, and now we're unable to see even that. The water, as the rain comes down, it's more like it's not even touching the ground. It's almost like blowing water going sideways, and it's definitely an intense storm right now.
Now, you're in a hotel, if I understand this correctly. Have they asked hotel residents to do anything special regarding this hurricane?
Yes, actually, about 15 minutes ago, they've asked us to all gather in a second-floor single room. So, and the hotel staff is staying here with their families as they need to, along with a lot of the relief workers with Red Cross and federal government. And they've asked us to all, as a safety measure, go down there. So, when we finish here, we'll be headed down there to join the rest of the residents of this hotel and wait it out there.
And you're without power, is that correct?
Correct. We lost power about an hour ago, but I just wanted to mention that there is good news on the horizon, that we understand that stateside they have activated Red Cross workers to a staging area there in Atlanta where you are, and that means that they'll be ready just as soon as the airport opens here again to fly in and bolster the efforts here for the folks that have their own situations to deal with in the morning.
And hopefully that will be as early as tomorrow as this passes over the island tonight. Nancy, thank you very much. Obviously, hunker down and seek in that interior room. We definitely don't recommend that you hang out by the windows tonight. We appreciate that report. Well, our hurricane expert, John Hope, joins us now. John, they're feeling the full brunt in San Juan.
Yes, indeed they are. I think the next couple hours, Jim, they'll get the worst that they're going to get, and then after that should be able to calm down a little bit, but not for a while, because looking at the radar, that eastern eye wall is very formidable still, and even after the eye goes over, if the eye hits San Juan, it may stay a little bit south of there. It'll soon start to rain very heavily once again.
We watched the center go over Biacas, this island here, earlier on, and now they're getting the eastern side one of the more powerful sides of this hurricane.
What's happened to this radar now, Jim, is what we always see when the hurricane makes landfall, be it on an island the size of Puerto Rico or a bigger landmass that begins to fill in. Before it made landfall there, we had that clear spot on the eye. But once you get over land, especially where you have mountainous area, that disappears. But you can still see the ring around the east wall and the west eye wall.
And those outer rings could even stay over water during the entire duration.
Well, part of the rings are over water, so you still have lots of moist air pouring in here. So the rain is going to be extremely heavy. Is extremely heavy. It's going to continue to be, and that, of course, is going to be at a fast enough rate, I'm afraid, in remote areas to cause some flash flooding as these streams overflow their banks.
John, one of the things we like to caution people of with a hurricane like this is, you'll get the western wall first, then the calm near the circulation center, and then the winds will pick up again. But some people may feel that, well, when it starts to taper off a little bit, that's the end of the hurricane. Well,
they have to understand the hurricane's only half over, so yes, you're right. A lot of lives have been lost when people went out to survey the damage and they got the calm. But remember, if you get a calm over your area, the wind is going to come up with equal ferocity from the other side in just a few minutes.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the infrared satellite picture, and John, decipher what we have going on here, some of the latest information.
Jim, for a while we could see the eye. Late this afternoon, for the first time in several days, we were able to see an eye. But that became obscured here, I think, for two reasons. One reason, you got these tremendous heavy showers built up near the center. That kind of obscured the eye. And then the circulation is being disrupted just a little bit. It doesn't quite have the symmetry right around the center because of the land. Now, this is mountainous land, mountains up about 4,000 feet. But the hurricane, as we can see on the radar, is still staying very much intact. Any weakening over land over Puerto Rico tonight, once this emerges on the west coast or northwest coast of Puerto Rico, it'll be out here over the Mona Passage, and we'll have plenty of time to regenerate again before it gets as far west as the Dominican Republic.
And how far west do you think it's going to go, sir?
Well, it's going to keep on coming west for quite a while, Jim. We don't see anything other than a path basically toward the west-northwest, and that's going to take it up in this neighborhood somewhere by Wednesday, which is not going to be very far off the southeast coast of the U.S.
And at that time, if it is there, we could see some type of hurricane watches go
If it is. Now,
we
have to watch for a few things. Should this go over a large share, the large part of the Dominican Republic, then it would weaken quite a bit. But it doesn't look to us as if it's going to do that. We think it's going to stay very close to the north coast, could even stay offshore there.
All right, that's something definitely to keep an eye on, and obviously the folks on the East Coast and in the Gulf should do the same as well. Folks, again, thank you, John Hope, for giving us the insight as always. If you need that information on the weather, you know where to go on the computer. It's at weather.com. Severe weather tonight tops the story back in the States. Let's find out what's happening with Mike Bono.
That's right, Jim. Yes, we have a frontal system bringing in a taste of fall. It's fighting against tropical air. We've had very warm weather over most of the nation in the month of September, and not giving up without a fight. We have some severe storms and have had some large hail around Major County and Blaine counties in Oklahoma, Kay County. Second time today you're under severe thunderstorm warnings after a tractor trailer got blown over on a road this morning.
Hurricane George comes ashore in eastern Puerto Rico. These are scenes from San Juan just over a few hours ago. Winds are gusting up to 115 miles an hour. Over 200,000 are without power, and reportedly 20,000 people are holed up in shelters to ride out the storm. Good evening and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Mike Motley. We'll have details on conditions across the U.S. in just a moment, but first we go to Warren Madden in the Forecast Center for the latest on Hurricane George.
Thanks very much, Mike. Hurricane George now pounding the island of Puerto Rico, the eye over the center of the island and moving pretty much right across the length of the island from east to west. A very dangerous Category 3 storm on the Saffir-Simpson scale. It has already caused extensive damage into parts of the Virgin Islands, and communications in the area still cut off. Here's the current position as of 7 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time on Hurricane George out of the National Hurricane Center. Top winds placed at 115 miles an hour, moving northwest at 14 miles an hour, and notice the pressure, 967 millibars. We have been seeing the pressure come down somewhat over the last few hours. George was strengthening somewhat just before it hit Puerto Rico, and unfortunately we have been seeing some very gusty winds in eastern Puerto Rico over the last few hours. Centered right now 25 miles south of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and will be traversing the island over the course of the next 6 hours or so. Hurricane warnings are up for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands westward across Puerto Rico into the Dominican Republic, and then when you get into the hurricane watches, once you get into the north coast of Haiti, northeastern Cuba, the southeastern Bahamas, and the Turks and Caicos Islands. We have on the phone with us right now Jose Fuentes, the Attorney General of Puerto Rico, and give us a report on what is happening right now across the island. Mr. Fuentes, could you tell us, please, what the current conditions are in and around the Puerto Rico area?
Yes, good evening. I'm here at the emergency center with most of the governor's staff, and we're receiving reports of damage from around the island. Right now, the situation is that we have reports of sustained winds of up to 120 miles per hour. Half of the power in the island is down. 70% of water service is down. We have about 20,000 persons in our shelters. There's a lot of trees that have been unrooted and are over the roads, and most of our rivers are coming out of their path. We're reporting in the mountains close to 15 inches of rain. However, telephone service is holding up pretty good. Only 15% of our telephone lines are down. Our cell phones are pretty much up. We have no beeper service. It seems that the eye of the storm lost its shape when it went over the island of Vieques. Then it dropped south. It reorganized. The whole storm gathered some strength, and then it's coming on shore. A very powerful storm.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Mr. Fuentes, Attorney General of Puerto Rico, for that update on what is happening now on the island of Puerto Rico. To reiterate, it looks like about half of the power in the island of Puerto Rico now is out, and the storm is just still in the center of the storm, in the center of the island, and should be traversing the island over the next several hours. Joining me right now is our hurricane expert, Dr. Jeanne Hope. And John, we've been looking at what's been happening here across the last few hours, and it really seemed like the system strengthened a little bit before it came on into Puerto Rico.
It did indeed do that, and that was reflected. We could see that on the radar, we could see it in the satellite pictures, and we could see it in the reconnaissance report. So because of that, it was upgraded again to a Category 3 hurricane, which it had been before.
As we take a look at our radar picture, we can see the situation now, and the center of the circulation, the eye is somewhat filled in here, but you can still pick out the center of the circulation here to the pretty much to the south of San Juan. But what really stands out on this picture is the eastern eye wall.
Right. Well, it's very typical for the eye to fill in over land. We always see that, Warren, so that's exactly what we would expect. But nevertheless, you can still see the form of the eye of the hurricane, and as you point out, this southeast eye wall is just tremendous. So folks that are about to get battered with that, they're going to have some very squally winds in that, also very heavy rain. So you heard about 15 inches of rain in some of the mountains. I think that might even be conservative, and almost all the rivers now are over their banks with a whole lot more rain to come. And then on the coast, Warren, we still have to worry about the storm surge, especially where we have onshore winds here. That could be 5 to 8 feet and battering waves on top of that.
Well, as we look at the situation presently and we check out what is happening in terms of the future now, we are looking at the system traversing across Puerto Rico. And the big question after this is, you know, where will it regain strength? Where will it go from here?
Well, sometimes it's almost hard to think of the future when we see an island taking the battering that we know that Puerto Rico is, but nevertheless we have to do that. And we think this will emerge entirely out over the water by tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact. And it's going to be over the open water, the Mona Passage here, and then we think it's going to skim right across the northern edge of the Dominican Republic, maybe just offshore, maybe just inland. It makes a little bit of difference whether it's in or out, because if it stays out, then it can regain all of its strength in a hurry. And I would point out that Puerto Rico, even though, you know, it's about 100 miles across and about 30 miles wide or so, and that's not enough really to destroy the circulation. It will mess it up some, but it wouldn't take long for this kind of a hurricane, I think, to regain its strength over open water.
One thing we should point out, though, is if this system should head into the Dominican Republic, the terrain in the Dominican Republic, there are some pretty high mountains, and that would most likely serve to disrupt the circulation.
That's true, but it looks more likely, Warren, I think, that it's just going to kind of skim that coast. If it's inland, it's going to be a very short distance. And then later on, about midweek, Wednesday or so, we're going to have to deal with a hurricane up in this neighborhood somewhere, and that will attract a lot of attention here in the mainland of the U.S.
Certainly will. Well, John Hope, thanks very much for joining us. We'll be checking back in with you throughout the night as we continue our coverage of Hurricane George battering Puerto Rico at this hour, and residents of the southeastern United States should certainly keep an eye on this system as it may affect the United States in the time to come. If you have to be away from your TV, please stop by our website, weather.com, for all the latest information on the tropics, which include other tropical storms in the eastern Atlantic. We're telling you more about those coming up in the tropical update. But now let's head back to the studio and fill you in on what's happening across the rest of the nation.
Well, across the country, we are seeing some more rainfall continuing in the southeast from what's left of our tropical storm Hermine. And we're seeing thunderstorms and tornadic activity popping up along a frontal boundary into Oklahoma this evening. The national satellites are showing those blow-up of showers and thunderstorms north of Oklahoma City. Heavy clouds and rainfall continuing into the southeast, into Alabama and portions of southern Georgia. Through 10 p.m. Central Time, a severe thunderstorm watch box in effect for much of northern Oklahoma. We've seen some supercells here and some tornadic activity, some heavy thunderstorms. No warnings out right now. They had them that were expired around 20 or 30 minutes ago. But towards Ponca City, north of Oklahoma City and north of Interstate 44, you've seen active thunderstorm cells tracking towards Tulsa. So watch out around Tulsa and Muskogee in eastern Oklahoma. And southern Kansas, too, just south of Wichita and towards Chanute, we're seeing some moderate showers push through.
And later this year, look for our brand new channel lineup. Thank you for choosing Comcast. Everything you connect with.
Every night we find a little more out about how the weather works and how it's going to turn out tomorrow. And that's what we bring to the viewers. It's the mystery of weather.
Right now it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Watch is sponsored by Home Depot. We start off with a look at the tropics. There's a hurricane out here, there's a tropical storm out here, and another tropical storm way out off of Africa. But this is the star of the show right now. This is Hurricane George. We've been following this for days since it developed into a tropical storm just south of the Cape Verde Islands and has taken this track almost due west, just slightly north of west, and now it is pummeling our friends on the island of Puerto Rico. That's where the center of the eye is, on the east side of the island, and we're really taking a battering right now. Now, as you'll notice, hurricane warnings are in effect for not only for Puerto Rico, but also for the north coast, the entire coast of Dominican Republic. Hurricane watches are in effect because we believe this west-northwest track will continue. So you'll be under the gun here in Cuba and in the Turks and Caicos. And by the way, if you're watching tonight and you don't understand English very well, Jose Daniel Marquez from the Latin America Weather Channel is on hand. He'll be with you in just about 1 minute to tell you the latest information. There it is, the center of the circulation, now moving across the central part of the island. And I'll tell you, even when that hits us, there's plenty more where that came from. It's been a problem on the north and east coasts. As the center moves eastward, winds will stream out of the south and we'll have problems with coastal flooding on the southern coast of Puerto Rico. Right now the weather is improving slowly out here in the Virgin Islands, but as the center moves right across Puerto Rico, tropical storm or hurricane force winds. More on that in just a second. Tropical storm Ivan, no problem. That's moving out and should continue northwestward out over the open waters of the Atlantic. And we're monitoring a new tropical storm that has just moved off the coast of Africa. That is Tropical Storm Jeanne, and this may take a similar track to the hurricane that's raking Puerto Rico right now. Well, that's the tropical update in English. Here's Jose Daniel Marquez with more in Espanol.
Sí, muchas gracias, Dave. Quisiera mencionar que este sistema tiene viento sostenido de 115 millas por hora y definitivamente es un huracán de categoría 3 en la escala de Saffir-Simpson. Cabe destacar que los warnings, o sea, los avisos y las alertas, permanecen para gran parte del Caribe Oriental, Puerto Rico y la República Dominicana. Pero lo más importante es que este huracán ya prácticamente se encuentra sobre la isla de Puerto Rico, afectando prácticamente toda la isla con vientos sostenidos huracanados prácticamente en San Juan, en el aeropuerto internacional Luis Muñoz Marín, y se han reportado algunos tornados cerca de la isla Nena o en la isla de Vieques. Las condiciones seguirán deteriorándose rápidamente en la región oeste de Puerto Rico, especial lo que es Aguadilla y Mayagüez. Cabe destacar ahora, con la foto de radar, el ojo del huracán, prácticamente lo que es Aguas Buenas y Caguas, moviéndose a través de la cordillera central de Puerto Rico y afectando ahora más bien lo que es Ciales, Morovis y Utuado. Mientras este sistema se siga moviendo hacia el este, las condiciones seguirán deteriorándose rápidamente en prácticamente todo Puerto Rico y en especial la región este de Puerto Rico, con fuertes lluvias y hasta posibles tornados en la región sureste de la isla. And now that has been everything for us. This is our last update in Spanish, and now we have Mike.
Thank you, Jose. This storm watch continues with a look at the weather here in the United States, and I'll tell you what, there's rough weather out here in Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas, moving into Arkansas. A severe thunderstorm watch is in effect till 10 o'clock tonight. So rough weather offshore, rough weather onshore, plus your forecast. We'll have the details on all these elements next on Weather Center.
High winds and rain batter Puerto Rico while its residents take shelter from the storm. Stay tuned to Weather Center for updates on Hurricane George's path after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by the Home Depot.
We have the how-to clinics where we show the customer how to do the project themselves.
After doing it for the first time, they feel a lot more comfortable with it.
They get involved, they get pumped, they take notes, they come to the Home Depot, they get the product.
The eye of Hurricane George is passing over Puerto Rico tonight, lashing the eastern part of the country with fierce winds and drenching rains. Thousands are without power and shelters are filled to capacity. Good evening. Welcome to Weather Center. I'm Dave Schwartz.
And I'm Christina Abernathy. 3 people are reported dead and damage is widespread across the eastern Caribbean. For the very latest, we turn it over to Warden Madden in the Forecast Center.
Thanks very much, Christina and Dave. Unfortunately, we do have to report that there have been 3 fatalities in Puerto Rico as a result of Hurricane George, a roof collapsing in a suburb of San Juan, causing those 3 deaths. We are dealing with a dangerous hurricane, which is moving through the Puerto Rico, island of Puerto Rico right now, the eye passing directly over the Commonwealth. We're looking at the current position now as of 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time by the National Hurricane Center, placed about 20 miles southwest of San Juan, Puerto Rico, the center of Hurricane George. Top winds at 115 miles an hour. The system moving west-northwest at about 14 miles an hour. Central pressure at 967 millibars. Hurricane watches and warnings out here from the warnings out from the U.S. and British Virgin Islands across Puerto Rico and through the Dominican Republic. And then once you reach farther to the west, the north coast of Haiti, the entire eastern part of Cuba, and into the Turks and Caicos, and into the southeastern Bahamas, you are under hurricane watches right now, which means hurricane conditions could be approaching you over the next couple of days. Very dangerous storm we are talking about here, and it is most certainly affecting almost every person on the island of Puerto Rico. Joining me now live from Puerto Rico is Ron Block, the lead forecaster in the National Weather Service office in San Juan. Good evening, Ron. Could you fill us in on what the current situation is now in the San Juan area?
Well, basically, of course, it's dark out now, and it's hard to really get a feel, but we've gotten a number of phone calls, and it indicates a lot of damage. For example, one of the major luxury hotels on the northeast part of the island, the El Conquistador, was reported devastated by the hurricane earlier. A number of reports of roof damage, structural damage, and many people just disoriented. It's just, for many people, it's the worst natural disaster of their lives.
Now, of course, about 9 years ago, we saw Hurricane Hugo come through the northeastern Leeward Islands and over through Puerto Rico. Any sense of how this compares with what Hurricane Hugo brought?
Well, actually, I arrived in Puerto Rico 2 weeks before Hugo, and it was my welcome gift. And I can tell you, just from what I've seen so far, this is considerably worse. The devastation we'll see, come sunrise, should be considerably worse and over a much larger area than we saw in Hugo.
Now, we've had reports from Mr. Jose Fuentes, the Attorney General, of over 15 inches of rain in the mountains. How severe have the flooding problems been so far?
Again, we know there have been severe flooding problems. The problem is that most of the local police and civil defense officials who would confirm it, of course, are not in a position to confirm it. We have great difficulty maintaining phone communication with many people, and so again, we're going to have to wait for tomorrow for confirmation, but those numbers sound very realistic, and I know there's been major flooding going on, especially in the interior mountains.
Okay, well, Mr. Ron Block, lead forecaster for the National Weather Service in the San Juan office, thanks very much for joining us by phone from San Juan, Puerto Rico. Joining me right now here in the forecast center is John Hope, our hurricane expert. And John, we have been following the storm. Just a couple of days ago, this system was almost on a Category 5. It weakened somewhat, but then just before it hit Puerto Rico, it strengthened again.
That was a very bad time, Warren, for that to happen, too, because just as it got there, the indications that we were getting from the radar, from the satellite, and the reconnaissance aircraft showed that it was getting strength. So just about the time of landfall, they raised it back up to a Category 3 hurricane, and that's what we have here. Over 115 miles an hour sustained winds, a lot higher winds than that in the mountains. You only have to get up 500, 600, 700 feet, and the wind is a good bit stronger, so maybe gusts to 150 or 175 in some of those higher elevations.
And one other thing that we have to worry about in any case of a landfalling hurricane is the possibility of tornadoes, and we do have a tornado warning now out for Orocovis and Barranquitas in north-central Puerto Rico. Tornado warning out. Doppler radar indicated tornado at Canabon in Barranquitas, moving west at 15 miles an hour. So please be on the lookout. Hurricanes can and do spawn tornadoes. They're hard to pick out in the midst of all the other chaos going on, but this is just an unbelievable area in southeastern Puerto Rico now, under the southeastern part of the eye wall of the storm.
And as Ron pointed out to us just now, Hugo just came across the northeastern tip of the island, and a lot of the rest of the island was left unscathed. And then a couple years later, we had Hortense down here in the southwest part of the island. This is raking in virtually the whole island. It looks as if that eye is going to move west-northwest and cover just about the entire island before all is said and done. And so that's devastation over a much wider area, certainly.
So we're going to wake up to a very terrible situation in Puerto Rico with the possibility of damage and flooding. But of course, now we have to start thinking about what comes next. This system will fortunately be through Puerto Rico sometime during the overnight hours, but then we have to start thinking, where is the system headed after this?
Well, tomorrow morning it should be pretty well past. It's going to take that powerful eastern eye wall a little time to get over that. But after that, we think it's going out over the Moon of Passage and then head over toward the northern coast of the Dominican Republic. Now, it may just skim the coast here. If that would be a good break for people farther up the line, because that would very likely weaken it a little bit because these mountains are so strong. Puerto Rico itself, I'm afraid, and is not large enough, and this is not going to be over there long enough to weaken it very much, but the Dominican Republic would. In any case, it's going to be up in here somewhere in this general neighborhood, say by Wednesday, and what happens after that, well, we're not quite sure yet, but certainly it's going to be close enough to the USA that we have to watch it very carefully.
Certainly indeed. Well, John, thanks very much for joining us. We'll be checking back in with you during the next few hours as we continue our coverage of Hurricane George. So we are dealing with a Category 3 hurricane pounding the island of Puerto Rico right now. We will continue to bring you further details as we receive them, and throughout the night we'll be covering Hurricane George as it progresses across the island. If you have to be away from your TV, though, and you're near your computer, you can find out the latest details from our website, the address weather.com. Let's head back to the studio now and find out what's happening in the United States.
Thanks a lot, Warren. And a reminder that this Weather Center is sponsored by Toyota. Here's what's going on across the U.S. We've got a front that's really just draped from the northeastern U.S. back through the Ohio Valley and into the Plain States. Another area of low pressure here, and some pretty big storms rumbling now through Oklahoma, but we also see rain and storms off to the east through the Ohio Valley and also the mid-Atlantic states back into Florida. So a lot of messy weather out there, and unfortunately we also have the threat for severe weather. A severe thunderstorm watch is in effect for much of northern Oklahoma. So the strong damaging winds and the large hail and the heavy rain could be causing some problems for you. Where you see the yellows and the reds, that's where the more intense storms are occurring right now. Parts of Oklahoma County now under a severe thunderstorm warning. So again, you'll want to look out for some rough weather here, maybe around Edmond, for example. And again, just watch out throughout this area. Oklahoma City, you'll want to keep a heads up, as well as in Tulsa. As we move off to the east, we're also